Become a patron at www.patreon.com/Golden Era Bookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos and articles on the golden era of bodybuilding. Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here. Today I'd like to talk about some of the methods that John Grimek used to develop his almost limitless power. To many, John Grimek may have been the greatest bodybuilder of all time because he was more than just a bodybuilder. He combined his massive muscular development and classic proportions with raw power and strength. And besides being a bodybuilder, he was also an Olympic athlete in weightlifting, as well as a strongman. He was truly a superman living amongst us mere mortals, one could say. And amongst others in the silver era, he actually used heavy support training to develop strength, as shown here in this remarkable photo of Grimek performing what is known as a harness lift. You can actually see that he's got a barbell and he's straddling the barbell, which is connected to his body via a strap, a leather strap, and a series of chains. And now I've covered the topic of limited range of motion training in a previous video, and it is heavy support training which actually falls under this category of limited range of motion training, and one could say is an extreme version of this form of training, and that's exactly what I'm going to be covering in today's video. Now, the method of heavy support training is also known as a dinosaur training method. Now, a dinosaur training involves training methods that were used a long time ago, hence they're called dinosaur training methods. We're talking about the Bronze and Silver era, and seem to have gotten lost throughout time. And it is said that when you do this kind of heavy support training, it kills fear of poundage. It's like saying, let's say you have a 400-pound max in your squat, and you stand up with 600 to 800 pounds on your shoulders. Doing that regularly, first of all, primes the nervous system in being able to handle that kind of weight, because you'll be trembling under the weight. You'll be literally shaking like mad. And because you eventually learn, your nervous system learns to handle extremely heavy poundage, more than you are capable of in your normal weightlifting, it basically kills the fear of handling this heavy poundage. And not only John Grimek used it, but many other silver era legends such as John Davis, and even later in the golden era, Chuck Sipes was another advocate of heavy support training. And even later on in the modern era, the late Charles Poliquin, the great trainer who actually incorporated many techniques and methods from the silver, bronze and golden era of lifting. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a kind of limited range of motion training, almost a very extreme method, because you are literally just holding a weight. You're not necessarily moving it, so it is very limited in range of motion. Basically, there is no range of motion. You're simply supporting the weight with all your strength. And what it's supposed to do, according to Charles Poliquin, it's supposed to shut down the Golgi tendon organ's response to injury, and therefore by training it, by overloading it, and the muscle, basically you shut off this protective mechanism that the Golgi tendon organ is responsible in the muscle. And another theory behind this heavy support training is that it also builds incredible tendon, ligament and joint strength. Now, if we look at the type of support training that John Grimek used, here's a great example where he is actually using the squat as a heavy support training for legs. And you can see that he's handling probably a 200-pound barbell with 4 people hanging off it. And I mean, these guys aren't huge, so let's say they each weighed about 150 pounds. So he was regularly supporting over 800 pounds in the squat. And you can actually see that he's actually dipped down a bit, even done partials with it. And for this reason, throughout his weightlifting career, it was common to know that John Grimek could easily squat well over 700 pounds, and we're talking ass to grass squats, right? And of course, heavy support training of the legs built up his tendons and ligaments, and as I mentioned earlier, shut down the protective mechanism response of the Golgi tendon organ. And this carries on through your age, because once you strengthen your joints, you'll be strong for life. And even at 70 years of age, there is a story that John Grimek walks into a gym and was performing 695-pound squats at 70 years of age. That is insane. The man was an absolute beast. Incredible strength. Now, other heavy leg support training that John Grimek did, as I mentioned in the beginning, was harness lifts. The harness lift, he actually would perform over 1,000 pounds. Now, just digest that for a moment. 1,000 pounds, over 1,000 pounds on the harness lift. And get this is the craziest, the freakiest part about this fact, and that is that he actually never reached his limit because the straps eventually broke. So we're talking, John Grimek lifting as heavy as possible and the straps breaking. The straps broke first, not him. It's incredible. So who knows what John Grimek's limit in the harness lift would have been. I mean, it is just insane. Here is a great shot again, the same one that I used in the beginning, of John Grimek performing the harness lift. Again, it is a partial repetition where you basically lift the weight a few inches off the floor. So he's wearing a strap with chains, with hooks and chains, and the chain wraps around the barbell. And he basically just lifts the barbell a few inches from the floor. So it really does work his whole spine, his hips, and of course his knees and ankles to handle this incredible poundage. So here is John Grimek performing harness lift. It's just insane. Now, in a recent article I read from Charles A. Smith on weightlifting exercises, specialized exercises really, that Silver Era weightlifters used to use, I read about how John Grimek used these very interesting contraptions and lifting setups, and that was basically constructed by Bob Hoffman in special barns. And here's a photo of such an apparatus. You can see that Grimek is actually standing on a wooden platform, and in his hands he's got a bar which is attached to a chain which is attached to this frame, which has probably well over 1,000 pounds, even more. And there's a great story about this, and it's emphasized in a book, Legacy of Iron, which is a novel written by Brooks Kubik. Now, because it's a novel, it doesn't mean that it's not true, because I've actually also read it in magazine articles. It's just that Brooks Kubik, in this particular book, collects a lot of the information from articles and made a really nice novel about it, but it is based on true fact. And as I mentioned, it was said that back in the day, Bob Hoffman had what he called his secret weapons, his secret gyms that he built in these barns, these wooden barns, with all these contraptions and lifting platforms. And he had the guys train there, the York team, such as John Grimek and John Davis. And one of these, as I said, is shown here. Another contraption that was used back then was a barbell that was actually hanging from the roof with chains. And this was loaded with a minimum of 800 pounds. And the guys would obviously go under this barbell and support it with their arms outstretched. So you can imagine, for example, John Grimek would actually hold this barbell, 800 pounds, which was already on chain, so it wouldn't come down crashing on him. But he would just press it for half an inch or an inch and support it to develop more tendon and ligament strength and joint strength. And he's not the only one that did this. Also, John Davis is said to have done this. So this is insane level of training, really extreme methods of developing strength, almost very similar to isometric training actually. And although in the day, in the Silver Era, there were only 2 places apparently that actually had these chain supported barbells, there are other methods that one can use to basically work heavy support training into your training schedule without going to these extreme measures or creating these insane barns and contraptions. And basically it has to do with using the power axe. So let's get into that. Now, in this same article written by Charles A. Smith, he actually recommends some alternatives to heavy support work without involving ridiculous contraptions, right? And as I mentioned earlier, you just have to use a power rack. Charles A. Smith recommends, for example, to get under the bar in the top of a squat position, and you basically hold it. And what you want to use is your top deadlift poundage. That's right, your 1 rep max for the deadlift. So let's say it's 400 or 500 pounds. That's what you would use. It's pretty insane. I mean, look at this guy. He's using 600 pounds, right? That's pretty insane weight, or even more, maybe even 700 pounds. I don't know. And you want to just hold it on your shoulders in the top squat position. And once you're holding it, you want to actually shrug your shoulders and squeeze the shoulder blades. This is going to work your entire body, really. Arms, legs, yeah, your spine, your core, everything. And it's just incredibly difficult. And you want to take 2 to 3 deep breaths between each shrug. And you want to repeat it for 8 to 10 reps just for 1 set, and that is enough. You'll be wasted after that, and should be probably done at the end of your workout too. And you want to work up with the weight to up to 15 to 20 reps, and then put on some poundage. When we're talking about maybe 20 to 30, 40 pounds once you've reached 20 reps, and drop down the shrug repetitions. And the Silver Era legends actually would work up to anywhere between 600 to almost 1,000 pounds for 20 reps. You heard it. It's insane. I've got all this information from an article back from the Silver Era, and I don't doubt the numbers, seeing the numbers that John Grimek used to use. Now, another exercise that is recommended is to basically increase the upper body strength using heavy support work, is to load up a barbell higher than your maximum press or maximum clean and jerk. And you want to hold it just above your chest as if you were going to press it overhead. Obviously you cannot, because it's well above your 1 rep max. And once you've pressed it like half an inch to an inch up off your chest, you want to hold it there for a few seconds, and then place the bar back on the rack. So if we read the description below it, it's quite descriptive. As it says here, above, for increased pressing power, hold the weight on the chest and then lift it off as if to press it. Hold for several seconds, replace on rack, and repeat. And you can see at the other image here on the right, talks about another shoulder and arm strengthener, which is to hold a very heavy, much heavier than what you can handle, dumbbell, or in this case almost a barbell, and just hold it as if you were going to press again in a side press, and you want to repeat with the other arm, and again hold for time. So these are the recommended exercises as heavy support work for the upper body. Now, if you'd like to learn more about these Silver Era methods that the weightlifters used to use for developing strength, I've got the training programs of Louis Abel, written by Chester O. Teagarden, on my website, as well as strength and bulk training for weightlifters and bodybuilders by Reg Park, both available on www.goldenerabookworm.com. And you'll find some excellent stories, especially in the training programs of Louis Abel, of John Davis, and I even believe the stories about John Grimek and their training methods. So it's a pretty good read. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Legacy of Iron, a novel written by Brooks Kubik, has these. It's an excellent book which really explains a lot of the Silver Era methods. It's a novel, but the stories found within are based on the training methods used by the, especially by the York Barbell Team. We're talking John Grimek, John Davis, Steve Stanko, etc., etc. I've read it and it was amazing. It was a great read. Available at www.brookskubik.com and www.superstrengthtraining.com. And finally, may I also recommend The Training Secrets of John Grimek, also written by Brooks Kubik, available on his website. And I gain nothing from promoting these books. I just think they're excellent reads, and I highly recommend them as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this video on some of the secret training methods of John Grimek. And I do say that they were secret because Bob Hoffman actually had these setups hidden away from his normal gyms. These were in barns, as I mentioned earlier, and we're talking about farmhouse barns, right? These were secret setups that were exclusively used for his athletes, for his Olympic athletes. And I mean, they worked beautifully, didn't they? I mean, the stories we hear from the silver era are just incredible. And John Grimek's legacy still lives on. His incredible feats of strength are still talked about today. And yeah, so I leave you with these awesome photos of Grimek at his prime. What an amazing human being, a true Superman who lived amongst us. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't to the Golden Era Bookworm. Leave me your comments and thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work, please donate via PayPal or become a patron. And as I mentioned earlier, you can purchase books and courses from the Bronze, Silver and Golden Era of bodybuilding from my website, www.goldenerabookworm.com. Hope you enjoyed the video. This is the Golden Era Bookworm. Bye for now.
Hi everybody, I just want to recommend this phenomenal book, Vince's Secret Locker, volume number 2 by Carl Coyne. I've been looking at this for about 4 weeks and I can't put it down. If you get a chance, check it out. He also has a part 1 that I highly recommend also. Vince was the trainer to the stars and had an amazing, interesting gym that today there's still not equipment like it around. It was all made out of wood. He'll be on our radio show coming up probably in the next couple weeks or so. Have a great day, and again, highly recommend this book.